Just because somebody hasn't been found guilty of a criminal offense doesn't mean that they've never committed a crime before. It's just that they haven't been caught. Same type of thing with a credit report. Just because their credit history shows that they're okay doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% sure if they borrowed $500 from a friend and never paid them back, it wouldn't show up on the credit report.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 178. One of the biggest fears that landlords and rental property owners have is nightmare residents. Tenants who seem okay at first, but then decide that they're not going to pay rent, they damage your property, and they cost you thousands of dollars trying to evict them and clean up the mess. How can we avoid this problem? Well, the best answer is proper tenant screening, but not everyone understands what the best practices are or even how to go about it. Today, I'm talking with DJ Newman, owner of Grand Slam Investigations. DJ is a licensed private investigator, and he's an expert on running background, criminal, and credit checks on potential tenants. And he's going to share his screening methods that will help you find the very best residents for your property. DJ, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Credit checks and background checks, I want to talk about that. But
Okay.
You're a licensed private investigator.
I am.
Which is kind of a sexy, fun, people think, oh, private investigator, like Magnum PI or something. You look like Magnum PI.
Well, thanks. I'm sure I don't have the following that Tom Selleck had, but
Or the new guy, I don't know what his name is. So how did you become a private investigator, and what's that like?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. So my background is law enforcement, and I was a police officer for about 6-7 years, and kind of took a career path because of some administration things, and I didn't really like some of the politics that were in policing. And so I went into teaching, and I taught high school juniors and seniors about the criminal justice system. And after 10 years of doing that, I kind of realized that this isn't going to work. The type of students that are coming out now, is just not as focused and not as driven as what I wanted them to be. And so I've always wanted to start up my own business. So about 2.5 years ago, I came up with the idea of starting Grand Slam Investigations. And originally it was to do the background checks and the drug testing. But I talked to one of my former police officer friends, and he was like, this is hands-on with what I'm doing. You need to do private investigations. So I went out and applied to get my PI license, and have been doing that ever since. And it's been kind of fun and interesting, I'll admit.
So what kind of PI type work are you doing?
When I started off, I was doing some workers' comp cases, just seeing if people were actually hurt when they were claiming, and getting the claims from their employer. I've done infidelity cases, I've done child neglect cases, I've done some fraud cases, doing currently embezzlement and a murder case, where I actually go around and do some interviews for criminal defense attorneys across the state of Michigan. So,
wow. So what are some of the qualities you have to have as a private investigator?
Well, I try and be determined to get what my client wants. So, without obviously breaking laws or rules that I have to follow, I try and dig as deep as I can and get them the information that they want or need for whatever the specific case is. So I'm really kind of customer oriented as far as that. I make sure that I do my diligence as far as the background information and generally trying to solve the problem that they have.
So you're doing a lot of work with the RPOA, and I know we have an established relationship between the RPOA and Grand Slam Investigations, where you're helping our members do background checks and credit checks on residents. Talk about that. Like, if you are renting out a property, what are some of the things you need to be checking on?
Well, what I've learned through talking with several RPOA members when they've signed up is, that everybody kind of has their own established criteria as far as, what they look for and what they want. So those that are inexperienced, will sometimes ask, what should I be looking for, or what should I be doing, or what type of check should I be running? And so we've kind of came up with 4 basic packages through the RPOA to make sure that we get the information that each landlord or property manager needs. We have a credit check where you're looking at a tenant's credit report. It's much more detailed than the decision reports that were previously given, and I think it gives a valuable insight as to a person's credit and whether or not they're going to end up paying you as a potential renter or not. We give the FICO score, we give open accounts as to what they have. And then we also...
Before you go on to the next one, so credit and FICO score, how does that indicate whether a tenant is going to pay you or not?
Well, typically what you can do is you can look back at their prior credit history. So we can tell when they've started establishing credit. The TransUnion is who we use to give us our credit score. And it shows you when they've opened up accounts, how many times they've been late on those specific accounts. So you have a pretty good indicator as to whether or not this person is a trustworthy person that's going to pay you on time, and whether or not they're paying their bills or not. So
if they're paying their other bills, there's a good chance they'll pay you.
Correct.
But if they're not paying their other bills,
do you want to take that risk?
Yeah. What's the threshold there? You talk about credit score, and is there like a number that you want to make sure you're above?
Well, obviously the higher the better. And every property manager, landlord is different. From what I've been gathering from several RPOA members, they typically won't take anybody under a 500 credit score, but some will take risks. It just kind of depends on the property that they're renting out as well. So,
and then there were other. You said there's 4 packages.
Yeah,
so one of them is credit score.
The first package is just a credit report.
Mm-hmm.
We also have where it's just criminal information because some people aren't really concerned with the credit report. So what we do is we have a national InstaCriminal check that does the entire United States. And what it does is it hits sex offender registries, it hits some national government stuff, but it hits a lot of databases in and out of the whole United States. With that package, we also have what's called our national InstaCriminal package, our national eviction package. And that checks nationally for any evictions that this person had. So why that would be important is if this person's been evicted before, you would know that prior to allowing them to come into your rental place.
Because chances are, if they've been evicted before,
it's probably going to happen again.
You're going to be the one evicting them the next time.
Right. And then our last package, or our last screen in that package is the Michigan iChat. And the Michigan State Police runs a database that only will show only Michigan, but it does a good job of showing the misdemeanors and felonies in all 83 counties in Michigan. And some of the other background check providers don't include that in their searches, and it's kind of misleading. So we want our members to know exactly what they're getting so we can give a full explanation as to why it's good, why it's bad, and give them that type of stuff. We also provide the iChat with the credit report and the other InstaCriminal and the national eviction database, and that's our gold package. So we've got a variety of different things that are set up for RPOA members based on their needs and what they want. And if they need a different package, we can always custom create something for them too. But that's mainly the majority of the packages have fit the needs of what our landlords and property managers want.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat-fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com.
I'm
curious, what is the tolerance when it comes to the criminal history of RPOA members, rental property owners? Is it any criminal history? Most people would say, nope, I'm not going to rent to you, or are they open to, depending on what the crime might have been?
Sure. I think a lot of it just depends on that individual landlord. I honestly don't get a lot of questions as to whether or not I want to take somebody with like a small theft misdemeanor or, a drug charge, is usually frowned upon a little bit more, I would say, just because you don't know what's going to happen in your rental property. But I really don't have a whole lot of discussions with that with members that have ran those. It's kind of on an individual basis, kind of like the credit report. They decide what's important to them, and
you provide them the information.
We provide them the information.
You may not even know what their decision.
I don't even know what their decision is. Probably 99.9% of the times, but sometimes there's questions that come up, and that's where I'm different. Because if RPOA members have questions, they can always call me and say, hey, I don't understand this. Help me understand this criminal offense, or help me understand this credit score and what I'm looking at. And you're calling directly to me. And so you don't have to worry about getting transferred, 5 different times to different people and having, like we all experience with the 800 numbers. So you're getting a personal service that isn't like any other in the background check industry.
Yeah. Are you often, do people ask you to give them advice on what decision they should make?
They do, and I try and refrain from doing that.
Are you not able to, or you just feel like maybe it's not the place?
It's a liability issue, I think, on my end, because if I go in and say, for someone to, I think this person's okay, and then they rent to them and they say, oh, DJ, you told me that this guy was going to be good, and, I have no way of knowing. We have no way of predicting the future. All I can give you is the information that's provided on the report and past precedents as far as, whether they look good on paper or whether they look bad. I mean, just because I would say that, just because somebody hasn't been found guilty of a criminal offense doesn't mean that they've never committed a crime before. It's just that they haven't been caught. You know what I mean? Same type of thing where, with a credit report, just because their credit history shows that they're okay doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% sure. If they, loaned $500 or, borrowed $500 from a friend and never paid them back, it wouldn't show up on the credit report, So, I mean, there's always some loopholes, but what this is designed to do is to give you as much information as we can possibly provide for you so that you can make an educated decision as to whether or not to rent to them or not.
What else do rental property owners and landlords need to know about screening their tenants?
You need to make sure that you are using a system that is compliant with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And what that is we do that. You have to provide information if you find any negative information on the person. So let's say that we ran an applicant and they came back with a criminal history. What would happen if that person wasn't really convicted of that crime? And so we have to provide that information to the applicant so that they can dispute those charges if it were incorrect. Now, I can tell you through the thousands that I've seen go through, I've never heard of anybody disputing those facts, but we still have to provide that information if we need to do that. If it was indeed like a case of identity theft where somebody misrepresented themselves, which I've personally seen happen as a police officer, we need to have the safety precautions there for them to fight that information if needed.
So if the landlord has a prospective tenant who is arguing with them about the credit history or the background check that was done and saying, no, that wasn't me, you're saying that you're kind of like the insurance policy to
we give them
here is the evidence.
Yeah, and we give them the steps. So if the applicant, they get a summary of rights, and so they can go and contact whatever bureau is reporting that information and fight that and dispute that with them. Mm-hmm. But you have to give them that information as far as to be Fair Credit Reporting Act compliant. And so we help make sure that you are Fair Credit Reporting Act compliant, and then we also help on the back end as far as if negative information comes out, we make sure that we're sending that information to them so that they can see, what exactly showed up on their background check.
Yeah. So the packages you provide are credit history, FICO score, eviction record, criminal records.
Yep.
outside of the scope of what you provide, what else do you see rental property owners looking at when they're screening prospective tenants?
I think I would recommend that they're still contacting the previous landlords. And while we don't do that service themselves, I think you can gain a lot of information by contacting prior landlords just based on how that renter was. Now, obviously, even in employment history, you have situations where people will just pass on a bad employee or will pass on a bad tenant just to get rid of them and not have to have the headache anymore. But I think if you do your diligence and call around and do a couple different, phone calls, you'll find out a lot about the information that doesn't necessarily come down on the paper.
Yeah, and I've certainly heard from other property managers that if you call the current landlord, you might not get the real story because they might be happy to get rid of that tenant.
Right.
So you want to call the previous or the one even previous to that.
Right.
To really get the real picture as to what this
yeah,
tenant
and
is
I mean, think of it as I do background checks personally for different police agencies when they're hiring police and firefighters and things like that. And what I kind of do as far as my scope is so the applicant will put down who they know. And then when I go and interview those people, I say, okay, this, obviously the applicant. Give me another person that they have no idea that I'm going to go contact, and I'll go and contact them. So you want to broaden the scope of, the people that you're talking to and the search that you're doing in order to get a well-rounded picture of who that applicant is.
If you are thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition 5 years ago, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional healthcare insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. So let's just make sure we understand your relationship with the RPOA.
Yeah. So what we did is we give discounted pricing to all RPOA members based on whatever package you want. And that's pretty much it. I mean, if you were to go elsewhere or you were to come to me directly, you'd be charged more. So you get that discount as far as being an RPOA member. So it's an added benefit for you. You get somebody that you can know and trust and develop a relationship with and have on a first name basis. And we also give you, different advice and perspectives as far as we also provide drug testing and things like that, where the prior knowledge that comes to the table with Grand Slam investigations can help hopefully eliminate some of the problems that landlord and property managers have had in the past. And if not, with the private investigation piece of the business, we can also help track down previous tenants that have kind of went rogue and failed to pay.
You can also help people with track down people who owe money.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And we've done that for quite a few RPOA members so far. So,
do you also help with the collections?
I do not do the collections. I've had several people ask me about doing the collections piece, and it's something that I'm looking into. But currently, I'm not involved in the collections process. I will find them. We do some process serving if you need that around the Grand Rapids or Big Rapids area, and then. But I'm not into collections as of yet.
So what is your area? Like if someone just wants a background check done, do you focus in Grand Rapids, Michigan? We have listeners all over the 50 states. So
sure.
Who would want to get in touch with you?
For the background piece, as being a member of the RPOA, we can help anybody. It doesn't matter what state they're in. We can help anybody from California to New York to Florida to Michigan.
You have access to criminal databases in all those states?
Correct. Yep. So we have information, and so what happens is when a person signs up, we give them a username and password, and you can put as many members on your account as you want. So if you have several people in your office that are running background checks for you, we can give them all a password and a username. And they can go in and log in and access that information. The other nice thing is that we keep the reports on file for 2 years. So if anybody ever came back, and you needed to find that information and you couldn't find it, we've got it saved for you. As far as the private investigation piece, I'm licensed in the state of Michigan, so we could do it anywhere in the state of Michigan as far as that piece is concerned.
So let's talk about the private investigation piece. I'm wondering if you have any stories. I mean, it sounds like you've done some investigation that might have been somewhat risky.
Yeah.
You got any stories for us?
Well, probably one of the craziest things happened to me while I was doing process serving, believe it or not. I went to a individual's house early in the morning, one morning, to try and serve her boyfriend. And when I came to the door, I saw the female walk through the kitchen area. And after I watched her walk through this window, I couldn't find her anymore. And it was kind of weird. And I'm like looking for her. And all of a sudden I hear a rack of a gun. And the female came to the door with a loaded shotgun pointed at my head, and while I'm trying to serve her boyfriend. And so that was kind of a pucker factor, a little bit. Early, rude way to wake up early in the morning. But so, I mean, that was kind of a realization as to, how dangerous it can be. And you wouldn't think that process serving would be that crazy of a deal, but it can be. And I've been chased a few times. I was doing a child neglect case here this past summer, and ended up getting spotted, and was driving. I was trying to get away an opposite way of where I came from so that the person wouldn't know where I came from, which direction. And lo and behold, my navigation on my car was incorrect because that road was a dead end. So as I got down about a half mile down the road, I turned around and started coming back, and here comes the guy right at me. And so as I was trying to get away from this guy, I may or may not have been speeding a little bit, and I came over the crest of a hill and hit one of the greatest white-tailed does. I was so happy to meet her. And completely destroyed my car and got the guy that I was following to catch up to me and kind of stare me down and wonder what I was doing there. So that was a little bit scary. So how do you handle those situations if you have a shotgun pointed at your head and an angry guy? You learn to de-escalate real quick as far as just using your common sense and your tongue. Being a former police officer, I've been put in several different stressful situations where I'm kind of proud to say that I never actually had to pull my gun. You learn real quick what makes people tick and what de-escalates them, and you try and de-escalate that situation as fast as you can. So,
what are some de-escalation techniques?
Well, it just really depends on the situation. Finding out what they are mad about, and how do I help solve the situation. I'm not going to lie, there's been some situations where I've had to make up stories as to why I was there, just so that they wouldn't know that I was a private investigator and I was investigating whatever it is. So thinking really quick on your feet helps, being in this role. Because obviously the goal is not to be disguised, not to have your disguise given up and to know why you're there. Now, if they happen to find out later, then that's different because you've usually gotten the information that you need in order to, help your client out. But kind of is what it is.
So the guy had you at the kind of a dead end road. There's a dead deer between you.
Yeah.
Well, where did it go from there?
I ended up calling the police and identifying myself as a private investigator, and I asked that they please send a cruiser as fast as they could, because in doing the surveillance of this guy, he had mentioned several times that he was a big gun advocate, and so I had no idea if he was carrying at the time or not. It was kind of ironic because when the deer disabled my car and the police were on their way, he actually left. So he sat there for about 5 minutes, never approached me, never came up to my car or anything, but then he just takes off. And I'm on the phone with the dispatcher, and I'm telling the dispatcher, look, I'm not staying here. I says, I'm going to go hide in the woods. And so I did. And sure enough, the guy comes back 5 minutes later in another car, which I knew was his. And so I had no idea, what he was going to try and do to me, or if he went home to get a gun, or, whatever else. So I hid until the police arrived, and then I felt it was okay to come out. And I got in the tow truck and got away as fast as I could.
Wow, that'd be a scary situation.
It was.
Yeah. Well, how would people get a hold of you, BJ?
Well, they can go to my website. It's www.gsipi.com, or they can call us at 231-359-1555.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today and tell us about your experiences as a private investigator and just the screening techniques you use for screening residents, whether it be criminal history, eviction history, credit scores, and that kind of thing. And really enjoyed your stories, too. It's been a fun conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.